Dude, that was crazy. I don't know where
They
to start.
delivered.
They delivered. I feel like we need to take a quick moment of silence just for the extremely stressful journey that we've been through. Where do you want to start? We need to talk about every storyline because each one was very well done and had some exciting stuff going on. What are you driven to mostly? Firstly, I should say.
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, everything's interesting. I'm gonna say Mook and Gaitok.
Okay, that is a doozy. If I can give my thoughts and see what you think. So we talked about Gaitok in the last episode and him being at a crossroads of needing to show Mook, should he want to be in a relationship with her, that he can sort of be a man in the way that she's thinking about it. And I didn't feel like he had it in him. He was definitely struggling with trying to figure out what to do. And we start this episode with seeing him talk about quitting, and his boss is like, maybe think about it and we'll talk at the end of the day. Um, and he ends up killing someone, and it leads to him getting the bodyguard job with Sritala, and it seems like being in a relationship with Mook. And I'm so split about how I feel about this because it seems like he lost something is one way of looking at it. Like it's possible to be like, oh, that's great for him. He got the girl he wanted. He looks happy. He's got a good job. But it did feel like he lost his innocence, or something left him that day. And I can't help but feeling a little bit sad for what that was because of how wholesome of a person he was. And I think the qualities he had are so rare that it's a little hard to see that happen. But yeah, what do you think? Are you more happy, or do you see the loss of something unique that was in him that he doesn't have anymore? We'll get right back to the video, but first we just want to remind you that if you're enjoying the discussion, to please like and subscribe, as it really helps out a smaller channel like ours. Additionally, we do a podcast on the channel called Men's Search for Meaning, where we explore and get into all kinds of relatable things about life. It's a lot of fun, so if you want to spend some more time with us, check out those episodes too after this one, and let's get back to it.
Yeah, I see the loss, but I'm distinctly happy about it because I do feel that he needed to embrace his masculinity.
Mm,
Um, and I think the surest sign of that is that there is a woman interested in him that I think was out of his league, but liked him anyway.
mm,
And she was giving him all the chances, and she was just saying, I need to see that you can step up and take responsibility, including responding to violence or handling the violence of the world.
mm,
And, it was traditional of her, you could say, but I would also say timeless in a certain way because the world has always been violent and will always be to some degree. It's not all it is, but that's one aspect.
mm,
And she was helping him evolve as a more mature human being, which involves a loss of innocence. So I think there was
mm,
something fable like about it,
mm.
and and timeless, and I think important for him in his journey. I mostly choose to embrace that side.
Yeah. I think why that's difficult for me is because of who he killed. Like, I could see, well, I guess it's hard to say where his life goes from here because that would just be pure speculation. But I personally don't feel like Rick deserved to die. He's a very tragic character, and it was so hard to see him meet his end because he lived his whole life feeling like he was robbed. And yes, you can put responsibility on him to say, well, it's all of our personal journey to heal from our individual trauma, whatever that may be. But you still can't help but feel for someone who kind of feels trapped as a kid, as a scared kid who, feels like his father was taken from him by this villain. And so it's hard to see that as the person Guide Talk kills because it feels so undeserving in my opinion, and that might be what's got me feeling conflicted about Guide Talk's direction. It's almost like he's a young member who wants to join a gang because that's all that there is in his neighborhood, but he really isn't the kind of person for that. And so they have him like rob someone, and he accidentally kills like a good person, and so he gets his initiation, but it's sort of sad the way it happens is how I feel. So I think those storylines are bleeding together for me, and it's why I feel a little conflicted about Guy Talk.
Yeah, I can understand that. I also felt a lot of sympathy. I was like, "Oh, don't kill Rick."
Yeah, I
But
know. While
I
he's carrying Chelsea away of all things too, it's just like his life has been a tragic disaster in a way, and now he loses the one good thing he had in his life, and then he gets killed while carrying her away. Yeah.
yeah, which is almost I actually think it's a relief he got killed. You have to think a little bit further past that moment. And I forced myself to because I felt so sad that he was killed. I think similar to you, I really like Rick's evolution
Yeah.
and feel for the tortured inner child that he was defending.
Mhm.
Uh, he almost did the the opposite of Gaitok in that he failed to master to move on and to master the problems of childhood and the he failed to grow up in a certain way, and it is like a painful but important thing to be able to have an adult life and move past the painful aspects of your childhood. It's nearly impossible. You have to, usually take some very committed steps to do it. But
Mhm.
he almost got the monkey off his back, but then at the end, he had that struggle, and he just couldn't do it, and he made a decision that is the type of decision that gets you put in jail for the rest of your life, unfortunately. Uh, it was a
Yeah.
it was a, somewhat understandable but terrible decision for himself and for Chelsea, and
Mhm.
she was the unfortunate innocent victim of that. And my only other point is that after that he was going to jail for the rest of his life, maybe a Thai prison, and probably and have to just dwell on the fact that this woman that I think he did love, he got killed. So it almost is like maybe okay that he's not going to get to deal with all that more pain for the rest of his life.
Yeah. I think that is true. It's like he was kind of released of his pain in the most tragic way possible. He had to watch it seemed like he had come around to Chelsea and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can, we're going to spend our lives together or something." And she was so happy to hear that. And my mind's just going in a million directions in terms of the symbology of the monkeys and the monkey on his back, which he referred to. We watched monkeys throughout the whole season. Um and lost my train of thought thinking about the monkeys, but there's a lot of
They're
things
very
to focus
distracting.
on. Yeah. But, yeah, Chelsea had got what she had wanted, she felt like he was withholding his love from her, and she felt like they were meant to be together, and she finally got what she wanted only to die later. Rick is relieved of his pain. He had to hear at the very end in the most tragic way possible that that was his father, and it makes the interaction that they had at breakfast so interesting because he's like, "Well, I remember your mother. She was a slut and a liar, like your dad was not a good man," which is so interesting because it really that's what tipped him over the edge. He's like, "Oh, you're insulting my family. You're making me feel so small." But when you think about it, that was his father referring to himself. Like, what kind of self-loathing is that to be like insulting himself like as an other, where he's like, "Your dad was a piece of shit,"
Mhm.
And when you think back to that, it's like, wow, his father had some real complicated emotions going on as well, and clearly was on the run from his own demons, I guess, and he passed those down to his son, and ultimately they both went out at the same time. But yeah, just I can't help but coming back to how just every angle of Rick's life seems tragic. His father abandons him. He's led to believe that he was killed. He obsesses over it his whole life. He finally commits to a relationship only for her to be killed and to find out that he just murdered his own father and there will be no closure there whatsoever. And then he's killed by someone who, really has no business killing him. And what a hard to endure storyline, and I felt so stressed during this episode, and, like, when he was walking over to, seemingly take Jim's gun and use it against him, I felt like an intense rush of nervousness about whether he was gonna be spotted before he got there, almost as if I was in that situation, so, well constructed, but yeah.
Yeah, Jim doesn't have a very strong instinct to live, from what I can tell, based on the fact that he back at his house was almost murdered by Rick and just sat there and said nothing. I know he was shocked, but that would be the time to say, "You're my son."
Yeah.
How do you not do that out of self-preservation? The fact that he was willing to be murdered and not say that 2 times is just a little strange to me. It was like obviously too important a secret even to preserve his own life.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're gonna say something about that.
Yeah, I take that as him leaving. He kind of fled his family to start over as a new person, he kind of pretended that Rick's father was dead, even though he was sort of in a past life Rick's father. He abandoned all that to start over, which makes me think he must have had a pretty rough life and probably, I think these things tend to repeat themselves, so he probably had a bad relationship with his father. He repeated a lot of those mistakes without realizing it and couldn't bear the pain of seeing that he was repeating what caused him so much damage, and he kind of fled from that to start over as a way of as a self-preservation in a sense, which is an interesting juxtaposition to what you pointed out. Um, and he even that much later in his life couldn't come to terms with it. His health isn't good. Usually that's when people are like, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I want to make things right, but he didn't have any of that. So I kind of think of him as a tragic character who passed that on to his son because he seems like he doesn't have a very good self-esteem. He made money in business, but other than that, he doesn't seem happy at any point. He's just kind of a shell of a person who harmed a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I did think that there was something I liked about him referring to himself in the third person to Rick saying, "Your father wasn't a good man."
Mhm.
I didn't take that as self-loathing as much as just wisdom. Like he's old, he's in his twilight years, and he knows that he did a lot of things that aren't good things, and I'm sure he doesn't feel good about it, but he's trying to just enjoy the rest of his life knowing that he's at a complicated and a kind of dirty heavy on the business side life, like the business of putting money above humanity.
Mhm.
So, I felt like there's something there, but he's a hardened man. He's a criminal.
Mhm.
Um, and he's just trying to live his older years, but didn't get to. And I think that's karmic and fine. But yeah, that's sucks what happened to Rick and Chelsea. How'd you feel about Chelsea?
I felt that was very sad. I was relieved that she at least got a quick ending. She didn't seem to be writhing in pain or anything like that, but she was such a pure, positive person. Um, and from things I accidentally, observed on Reddit or something like that, or Facebook, I saw people thinking that she was going to die. I didn't look into why they thought that. I'd catch a quick headline and be like, "Oh, kind of wish I didn't read that." But there were a number of people predicting that she would die for some reason. I forget if it could be that she thought things happen in threes, or there. I saw some headline with significance to her necklace. I don't remember what it was. It said something on her necklace that was a nod to something else. So if anyone watching knows what that is, let us know in the comments. And just a reminder, anyone watching, let us know what you think. This was a doozy of an episode. It's bittersweet to be ending the season, and we definitely want to hear from you guys. We've had a lot of fun um, following along this season, and we want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, so, did I answer your question? I got a little
Yeah.
distracted there.
Yes, I think you did about Chelsea. You felt sad. She
Oh
got a
yeah,
bit
yeah,
of an ending, which was she got a quick ending. I actually thought you meant there was some resolution to her character, which I think is true. She's been chasing after Rick the whole time we've seen her and hasn't really gotten that much from him and actually got something that meant a lot to her in the end. And I actually
yeah,
can't tell what else she has in her life other than her love for him and wanting to be his soulmate and stuff like that. And
yeah.
it was just a short version of that at least had a happy ending before her life ended. I guess trying to look on the bright side, but yeah, it's definitely sad because she's a great person. I like her a lot.
Yeah, to that point, one other way to look at this, which didn't come to me right away, but if we try to examine the characters within the context of the show, which has different beliefs and whatnot, she seemed like she would be someone who strongly believed in reincarnation and the afterlife, and there were some kind of divine messages in there with Lochlan thinking he saw God and him seeing these monks standing over him. So it's possible that in her belief system, they are together again. just in a different place, kind of like what the monk said when he talked to Timothy, where they've merged back with the collective consciousness or something like that, and there
Yeah.
is a possibility in those belief systems that they presented that they have merged into what she wanted for them all along. So um, it wasn't immediately obvious, but I think there is a possible good ending for them if you can imagine it that way.
I like that
Um,
thought.
yeah,
That's
I think
nice.
that's
Yeah.
right. What is the other thing I wanted to mention about Jim? Maybe there's nothing else. Um, do you want to jump to Laurie, Jaclyn, and Kate? That
So,
ended probably as good as can be. Oh, I remembered what I wanted to say about Jim. I've been
mhm,
tracking my predictions this whole season, and I've gotten so
mhm.
many things wrong, but that was one that I called in the very first episode that I thought Jim
Yes.
was the father, and happened a little bit differently than I thought. But when that happened, I was like, "Oh my god, I got one right!"
I thought about that too. You did predict that, which
Yeah,
I would not have thought of, so that was quite a good one.
yeah. I had since believed that I called it wrong, but what a bombshell moment for that to be like, "He is your father,"
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to come back to that. So yeah, Kate, Jacqueline, and Laurie. Pretty incredible storyline. I really like that for them. And it seemed like Laurie was the one who was needed. Like we talked about the theme in one of the last two episodes, that some of these people weren't able to get to where they were without the help of someone along the way. We thought it was going to be Piper, who kind of turned back and realized that she wants to be the privileged princess instead. Uh, but it seemed
Yeah.
like Laurie kind of delivered her friends to a closer bond, and I think neither Jacqueline nor Kate could have done that. When they all talked about it, their way of repairing the friendship was just like, "Oh, this week has just been so amazing," which is to ignore all the horrible things that happen throughout the week and just pretend they aren't there. And you can't have a strong bond with someone if you're ignoring big parts of one of your experience. So I thought it was really great that Laurie was able to do that for them, and it did feel like they were able to have a better friendship as a result of it, and it's just really nice to see the way they came back together.
Yeah, that was quite a lot of perspective. I don't know that I've ever felt the same way that Laurie did, but it felt believable
Mhm,
as a, just moment of insight and wisdom of her to just be like, "Well, you know what?" Actually, and not just inside wisdom, but, like, deep intuition and love for her, people in her life, her tribe, so to speak.
mhm,
I was just like, "Wow, that was a very, kind of evolved statement overall that she made."
mhm.
That she, felt something kind of deep for them even in superficial moments because, what did she say about time? That, you know,
I don't remember what she said about time.
something like time gives meaning. She was talking about meaning comes from
Yeah.
a lot of things and sometimes just time itself or something. And I was like, what does she mean by that? And then
Mhm.
she explained it, which I think was good. I mean, I think that's the thing I'm pointing to, which is that
Yeah.
with enough time spent with people, you can almost see the deepest parts of them and come to appreciate them on a level that you wouldn't otherwise. I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. I interpreted that as being really in the moment where, like being able to accept someone despite their flaws, I think is probably the beginning of bettering a relationship with them, and it seems like she
Mhm.
recognized that in her own sort of flawed way.
Mhm.
But I just
Yeah.
really enjoyed her honesty. She was able to be the arbiter of honesty in this friend group, and everyone benefited tremendously from it. So it's so nice to see that, like, two people just weren't able to do it. They were going to kind of fall back into the ruts they had been in before and accept things despite all the pain that was coming along with them. Like, for them to say, "Oh, this has been an amazing week," it's like, no, it hasn't. It has not been an amazing week for anyone. There were some pockets in there, but it's been a pretty terrible week, and it really highlighted some issues in the friendship. And so it was just really nice for her to be able to cut through that and for everyone to be better off for it. So yeah, I loved that storyline in contrast with all the other things that were happening, because it was such a purely positive ending in a way that
Mhm.
felt believable. Like, I do believe they're better off from that experience. And what a nice thing to be able to say, because that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you just experience pain and it doesn't get any better. But this was a unique instance where, because of Laurie's insight or just the way all of their personalities interact, they were able to land somewhere deeper when they brought some honesty in, and yeah, very satisfying.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I feel exactly the same way as you.
All right. Well, I want to put this out there and see what you think of it. So, moving on to Belinda, who has had quite a significant change in her life. I, in a way, feel like she became Tanya in that moment, and she transferred her Belinda-ness to Pornchai. So, hear me out. Belinda, kind of a tragic character in her own way, but she's held true to her beliefs, and you could argue that kept her in the place that she was in. I think we're not unfamiliar with the idea that for a number of people, accruing a lot of wealth can come with moral sacrifices. I think that's a pretty well established cliche, or what's the word? Well, cliche
Trope,
and
truism. Yeah.
trope, yeah, yeah. Still not the word I was thinking of, but, it's okay. So, she has this opportunity that only, well, going with the theme of, she couldn't get to this place without someone helping her. Her son kind of ushered her across the gap from one life to another, and it was really sad to see that, she got something from being very bold and sacrificing her morals. And then because of that, she was like, "Sorry, porn shy. My life just got a whole lot better. I'm out of here." And he seemed to take that pretty hard, and I felt for him in that moment. And it felt to me like that's what Tanya did. Tanya was like, "Hey, I'd love to help you and do this together, but like I got my own thing going on that's pretty good, and I'm just gonna go do that." And she did the same thing to him, which was a really interesting direction for her character, because she was so hurt when Tanya did that to her. And Tanya didn't owe her anything. It's just she saw this opportunity that might come about, and she was very excited by it. And Tanya ultimately just did what she wanted to do in her own self interest. And Belinda did the same, and kind of then, similar to the end of season one, where you see sad Belinda on the beach waving to the rich guests as they leave. She was a rich guest leaving the resort, and Porn Chai is stuck on the beach waving to her. And it really felt like this transference had occurred. And I didn't like that for Belinda. It's nice to see her get something, because I don't think she's a bad person or a bad character, but I didn't like how much she's sacrificed her morals. Again, it's not like Tanya was a saint and she's, selling out like a truly good person for money, but just something about it felt a little gross, I think. Um, so I'm curious if you see it that way, if you see it totally differently, or what your take is on her storyline, because we've never seen a rags to riches story in White Lotus before.
Yes, I did not like it. It made me like her a lot less, and
Hmm.
I didn't even like it for her life, given that I generally care about her as a character. Um, I like her purity, just like with
Yeah.
Chelsea. These are things I really appreciate. It's hard to find. It's a real virtue when someone has a strong moral compass and is not doing what so many of the other characters are doing, which is like strongly benefiting from wealth in a way where you don't care about other people, or just using your wealth to, press on other people or hurt other people in some way.
Hmm.
Um, so she's quite different from that, and of course, she would prefer to have an easier life, and I can appreciate that. But she essentially blackmailed a bad guy, but she still that's how she got her money is through blackmail, and uh, it would have felt better if he really, really hurt her or did something unfair to her. Then it would feel good that she actually got some of what she deserved. What he took from her, she got to take something back. But there
Yeah.
wasn't that story. It was just he's a bad guy who killed somebody that she had a passing interesting acquaintanceship with, but really more of a vendor vendee relationship or whatever, and vendor customer relationship.
Yeah.
And then she gave up the one most real thing she had, a relationship with someone that loved her for who she is, and it could be one of her last opportunities, if not the last opportunity in her life to be certain that someone didn't love her for her money since she now has a good amount of money.
Hmm.
She just completely gave that up without exploring it very much. It was just like, my priorities have changed. My circumstances are better than you, now.
Mhm.
That's the kind of the a little bit of the vibe I got. I'm sure she wouldn't say that, she meant it that way, but I just
Yeah.
didn't like that for her. I didn't feel it was triumphant or exciting or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, hearing you describe it, I feel even more gross about it now. And I think they try to justify it by making Greg a person you don't feel bad for. Like he's not a good person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, she took advantage of a bad guy. That's not so bad, you know. But yeah, she switched up immediately, you know? Like she really did have a good connection with this person. And like you said, going forward as a multimillionaire, she's never gonna have that certainty again. And he liked her as just a hotel employee. You know, it's not like she came in with some importance. Like he really saw her for who she was, and they each connected over their personalities. And I think that is something that she won't get to have again. And she
Yeah.
seemed fine. She seemed fine with that, which doesn't fit with kind of her virtuous nature. And the expertise that she leveraged her morals with totally caught me by surprise when she storms out of the room during the negotiation and she's like, "All right, go back in there and close that deal." You know, it's like, "What? Who is this person that, you know, suddenly is like a shark taking advantage of the actual shark, you know?" It didn't make sense. So yeah, she experienced a rapid shift in her character and kind of morally plummeted and she was happy about it. She was thrilled about it, you know? So, yeah, it's pretty gross actually, now that I think about it, and left a bad taste, um, in my mouth for her. So, I mean, season 4 has gotta come because this show is super popular. I wonder if
Mhm.
she'll be in it and we're gonna see her transition because that seems way too juicy not for them to explore because, again, we've never seen this kind of rags to riches transition in White Lotus, nor have we seen
Yeah.
a riches to rags transition for the Ratliff family.
Yeah,
And,
that's true.
so I think it would be it's too juicy for them not to go there in season 4, and I kinda would like to see it just to see what's gonna happen, but I think it's gonna feel a little bit gross.
Yeah.
Um
I want to also add that Belinda had a golden opportunity. How often in life do you get to fulfill the fantasy of like two young people? Not that they're so young, but just putting it this way for effect. Like these two young, dumb kids fall in love and they have all the great stuff that makes life good. They're in love, they're together, they're committed. But they don't have money, and maybe they fantasize about one day just having a pile of money somehow. I don't know how.
Mhm.
And that just makes their life even better in their fantasy. She had that
Yeah.
and instead just took the money, but not the love. I don't like that.
Yeah, and weirdly, like, fled with her son, you know, like, obviously, they're gonna leave together. I'm just the symbolism there is kinda strange where it's like she chose this person and, you know, the way that he was proceeding during the business negotiation made me not like him at all. You know, he had this kind of purity about him. They really didn't do much to establish that. It was just the way they cast that role and the way that he came across. You know, he has a very bright
Yeah.
smile and he's a young guy, but he was pretty disgusting during that deal as well, where he's like, "We don't care what you've done. We just care what you're gonna do for us," you know? And it's like, damn, he's only like 20 or 21 and he's already like empty from a moral perspective, you know, like not even a second thought. And you know, she's got to live with that as well. She's kind of encouraged him in a huge way to proceed his with his life that way. And yeah, I really just don't like that storyline for
Yeah.
them.
I'm curious, do you think the writers thought that it was this like triumphant, like you go girl kind of moment?
No, I think they seem to be crafty and expert enough that I think there's a lot of layers to what they're presenting instead of
Mhm.
just like what you see is what you get, which they did do that at times, but I think the social layers we know are there and we know they're intentional. And I think it's meant to feel a little bit gross because they didn't have to have porn shy there at all. He kind of is just existed as this anchor point to Belinda's old life. And she was like, "See ya. I got money now. Loser," you
Mhm.
know, like it just kind of bailed and didn't seem to she wasn't sad when she was leaving, she was just purely elated for finally having an easy life, but it cost her her best qualities, which I think is why they say when people are young and hungry, whether it be musicians or athletes, it's like they always feel that that was the best moment in their life. Once they have all the money and everything, it's like it usually doesn't land as importantly as they imagine it would earlier in their life, and she's kind of at that transition for herself, and maybe we'll see her regretting that, or rekindling her humanity. That would actually be a nice arc for her to see that this life that she lusted over is a lot emptier than she realized, and she gave up some of the most important things
Yeah, and I
in
trust the
pursuit of
writers
it.
to deliver that because that does seem the truth and just something
Yeah,
that she'll find out soon. So,
yeah,
with that, you've been mentioning the Ratliff family, and we must get to that because that is my favorite storyline of the show, although I liked all of them. I ended up having enormous sympathy for Timothy, and you may recall early on how much I disliked him because he was a absolutely hateable character. There was almost nothing redeemable about him in the beginning, just like a
yep,
deeply selfish man who lives for just himself and his clan, which is like a reflection of his narcissistic being.
hmm,
And yeah, just had nothing good to offer. And by the end, his tragedy, his humanity, the fact that you can lose everything, humans are fallible, the fantasy can be burst. All that was played out. It was almost like Shakespearean or something like that. The fall from grace that he experienced,
yeah,
and yeah, just to see him at the end, I was not loving the decision. I was like, that's I sort of get it, but how can you kill your whole family? I actually don't understand how a loving person, whatever we
yeah,
perceive him as, he's not some monster killer. Like, how could he do that?
yeah.
I was very glad that he didn't do it in the end.
It took him a while to come around though. Like he spent probably an hour collecting all those seeds and fruits, and then the premeditated nature of chopping them up and then thinking about it all day and then going to dinner and spending time with his family and still deciding to go through with it, getting the, pina colada ingredients delivered to their villa and then mixing it up and then serving it to them and then watching them drink it, and they complain how bad it tastes and he encourages them to do it anyways. Like so many opportunities to back down. And it's nice that he did eventually back down, and I still feel like there would have been some side effects for how much they drank based on how many goddamn seeds he put in there.
Yeah, but a lot.
But
Yeah,
yeah, he does back down in a very weird and dramatic way that his family seem to forget pretty quickly. And then poor Lochlan just gets caught in the crossfire. He's grappling with his own growth in his family and feeling like he doesn't belong, and he kind of came out of his shell in a weird way, and his brother almost hates him for it, or just, it's like the relationship is forever changed. He's holding all these burdens, and his brother's like, no one can make you into a man. You have to do it, and so then he's like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drink that protein powder and be a man.
yeah,
And instead he almost kills himself. And I really thought he was dead because that was the
that's
first
how.
death they showed, and, for all I knew, that could have been the only death. I mentioned to you before recording that I went on Facebook, and in half a second, I saw an image, and I couldn't get away fast enough, and it's the image of Timothy holding Lachlan's lifeless body, and I'm like, "Great, now I know that he dies." And it ended up,
Ah,
not being the case,
thank
Terrible
goodness.
that spoiler was there, but kind of exciting that it turned out to not be true, because that was hard to watch, and, like, the imagery of him being underwater and trying desperately to surface and not being able to was just rough to go through.
Yeah.
But it was very relieving to see him come back. I don't know how that happened, if I guess he was able to throw up before he passed out. Um, but yeah, I'm really glad they didn't go there because, for Timothy, he's like, "Could you live without money?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think I could." Which
Mhm.
is like Timothy's only ally in what feels like the hopeless losing battle, as everything that he values most is being stripped away from him, and he's contemplating murdering his family. And the one person who's kind of just intuitively on his side, he indirectly kills, is like, God damn, this is like every storyline is just tragedy, tragedy.
Yeah, I was very sad about that. I was like, "Oh man, Lachlan is such an innocent character, and he's so young." And right, he was the one that actually said he could live without money, and I don't know, maybe to some degree that's true. But I was so bummed. I was thrilled when he woke up. I was like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah.
Um, because, I don't know how I ended up rooting for this pretty unlikable family other than Piper and Lochlan. Um,
Yeah.
but, yeah, they and I think they said such an important thing at the end. Like, finally, he said what I think I said something like this in one of the previous podcasts, is that, like, it doesn't mean he's gonna, like, rot in jail for the rest of his life or that the family's money is completely and totally gone and they're in, destitution right now.
Yeah.
Lawyers do things and white collar criminals get off, sort of unfairly with less prison sentences and they get to retain some money. I mean, I think we've seen that a little bit with Sam Bankman Fried, even though he's in jail, and Elizabeth
Yeah.
Holmes from Theranos. It's like it could have been a lot worse what they had to deal with. And I have a feeling they'll both have plenty of money when they get out because they'll be famous and et cetera. So
Mhm.
I just feel like somehow the family will get through that. There'll be some jail time perhaps and plenty of money lost, but then they'll get back on their feet. And they didn't all need to die. That's why I agree with you that Timothy getting so close to killing his family and having so many premeditated actions, that is concerning. Like, I think it's just the writing. I don't actually attribute it to like the character as it exists in my mind, but I don't know
Mhm.
how he could have done that because the family, needed to make it through. That's what a family must do, in my opinion.
Yeah. Actually, I think even more than Belinda, I would like to see the next season follow up with that family
Yeah.
because there's such different characters in there. Like, even though if he does go to jail, it's probably going to be a brief stint. Can Victoria survive that? Will she be driven into the arms of some other man who can provide for her? Lachlan, after his near, yeah, well,
Sharing her with porn shy or something like that. This would
he's
be such a
much too poor. She's
terrible,
gonna go into be driven
terrible
into
match.
Belinda's
Don't
arms.
wanna do that's great. She'll be like,
Yeah,
I didn't know that I was attracted to women, but I'm feeling kind of attracted to you right now that you've
yeah.
won the
Now that you
lottery
have
there."
$5 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wonder, Lachlan, like he's had this near death experience, and he said, "I think I saw God," and it looked like there were four monks standing over him.
Mhm.
Did you interpret it that way? At first, I thought it
Yeah.
was like his family trying to wake him up or something, but then they showed like bald heads and robes and stuff. So I interpreted that as the monks, which makes me think he could really lean into being the person who actually goes to the monastery or does something like that. Like he made a connection, an unforgettable connection. I think, most people when they come back from death like that, they're forever changed and probably for the better. But it's like Piper exposed him to the idea. He seemed to like it and wanted to stay there, and she, couldn't do it. And now that he had this experience, I feel like that would solidify it. And like Piper, I think, is just going to end up with another successful man, like that will be her safety in these uncertain times for her family. She'll kind of marry off. And Saxon, I'm curious about because he did seem interested in those books from Chelsea about
Mhm.
meditation or those other concepts, and he had the opportunity to disclose that to Piper's like, what are you reading? And he could have been like, oh, it's a stupid book about meditation that someone gave to me. But instead he kind of kept it a secret, which makes me think it was at least a little bit special to him. He didn't want to feel judged for something that was very new to him that he was exploring. So I could see some of that experience also leading him in a different direction. So I'm found myself surprisingly interested in their arcs, especially after what they went through this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a path of growth for Saxon, but his needing to be so masculine all the time and hide the fact that he was reading a book that had some new age type of properties to it,
Yeah.
I think is him walking in his dad's footsteps,
Mm.
because I'm sure his dad taught him to be hyper masculine and hide his feelings and not do anything, that's too open-hearted. So, that's a shame, but I think we're seeing a small departure from it possibly,
Mm.
and that is nice. Um,
Yeah.
Piper, that surprised me. It felt believable, but it surprised me because I thought that she would be able to handle the food being bland and the bed being small or whatever she was saying. Like,
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised, but I believed it ultimately. I could see her feeling that way.
Yeah. I think that really solidified the observation that I made in the previous episode, where when she responded poorly to Lochlan wanting to stay there, I'm like, wow, it's almost like she has a bit of her mother in her, and she's
Mhm.
responding to Lochlan the way her mother responded to her, which made me think that she had more in common with her than she wanted to admit. And this kind of solidified that for me because she really acted like her mother, which is just like this spoiled person who can't handle minor inconveniences. It's like the food's bland, the bed was a little bit stained, and there's no air conditioning, and she was in tears about it. And some of that was, I think, her guilt at feeling that way, but it felt like she really became her mother in that scene. And then her mother is like reinforcing this, oh, I love you so much. So that's the
Yeah,
way I
she was
interpreted
thrilled,
that
yeah.
scene. Yeah. Her mother was like almost looked like she was having an orgasm hearing that she didn't want to go back there. She was like,
She was so happy.
yeah. So
It's
that's how I
adorable.
read that, is she like it or not, she had more of her mother in her than she realized. And I think that is an apt observation, because I think in many ways we are our parents. We are our parents genetically, and we are our parents to the degree that they kind of indirectly indoctrinate us with certain things. And there's always departures from that. No one becomes a carbon copy of their parents. But I think sometimes we feel more differentiated than we are with certain things, not with all things. And that's what I saw here. It's like they say the apple doesn't fall so far from the tree. It's like we do our best to change certain things, but this for me was demonstrating that her mother's blood runs through her veins, for better or for worse. And we saw a little bit of that in this scene.
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit of that. I think she's done way better than her mom. Like, I think she's,
Totally. Yeah.
like, considerably better, but yes, we did see the part of her that has a commonality with her mom and can't stray too far from her family, to your point.
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah, but I kinda wish the best for the family because they're all growing other than Victoria. Um
Yeah. No growth whatsoever for her.
No growth for her. She will have to grow, because she's about to go through a lot of tragedy, but who knows? She could find a way to not grow and just play the victim the whole time, I'm sure, and like you said, fall into the arms of Belinda and, just be rich again, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Uh
That'd be a beautiful story to behold. So did we miss anyone? We got
We
Mook and
did, I'm
Gaitok, we
sure.
got Rick, Chelsea. I guess just briefly, I was a little surprised to see Greg go from this cunning mastermind to just getting played by a massage therapist. It's a little hard to believe for his character, but they didn't really have a lot of depth for him. Oh, and it was true that he does want someone to bang his girlfriend and he can
I
come save her.
know.
I thought that was like his plot to kill Saxon, but he was like not at all the dangerous, conniving guy who wanted to murder Belinda and blame it on Saxon. He wanted Saxon to fuck his girlfriend, and I couldn't believe that that whole thing was confirmed true. And the scene where he's like at the
Yeah,
very end, couldn't believe that.
yeah, he's such a creepy guy, yeah, that was like, "Oh, wow, that's for real," but I sort of believed it. I think a part of me
Yeah.
believed that was true. Anyway, I was open to it.
Hmm.
I guess we didn't talk about Pam ended up being a nothing character, sadly. I was hoping for some serious,
Yeah.
roles for her, but no, she just was a cell phone holder.
I was glad
Um,
to see her pop up again. It was good to see Pam. We'd been
it was
wondering
good.
how she was doing, and she was doing fine.
She was doing fine.
As
We didn't talk
yeah.
about Valentin, that's the only,
Mm. Yeah, there's
uh
kinda not a lot there. Like, I felt like I would have been happy to see him get what he deserved. He chose to endanger people, and, maybe the guns weren't even loaded and it was pure intimidation or something, but, um, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. That is where I would have rather had Guy Talk put his killer instinct energy. It's like man up and kind of get them caught, because they deserved it. I don't feel like Rick deserved it half as much as they did. His sob story, and we know his friend's a liar. Alexei
yeah,
was
yeah.
lying about his mom being sick, and Valentin is also, it's just like this self-preservation, this selfish
Yeah.
self-preservation theme. So
I know, I
yeah,
didn't love that they just got away with everything, but
and probably will continue to do it with whoever works there next. They're
yeah,
opportunists, and they don't seem like people who have capacity for change in them.
true. Yeah, so I agree,
Yeah.
there's not too much there, but it was it was interesting that he didn't get found out, even though he committed a crime so early in the series, and we kind of were like, "Whoa, what else is he going to do?" But he's just turned into like a petty criminal and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only other thing I wanna say is how much I love this show. I mean, this
Yeah,
season, it can never replace season 1. There's just such a nostalgia for season 1, the location, the music, it's, like, just perfection in my mind. But I
yeah,
like this one significantly better than season 2.
me
I feel
too.
like the stories were a lot more compelling. Not that season 2 was bad by any means, but this I would rank very securely in second place for me. And,
Yeah,
if I had seen this first, I might like it more, but there's something just so warm about season 1 despite all the truly uncomfortable things happening in it.
yeah, I agree. Season one is probably the most well written TV show or TV series, let me say, I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think this is not too far behind it. Like bravo to the writers. They really did it again.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, season two again, well written. But I don't think I ever need to watch that again. Whereas I would rewatch this probably in a few years, and season one I would rewatch now.
Yeah,
So
I agree. They're really good at the misdirections and leaving little red herrings that you latch onto that turn out to be nothing, and then engineering some really good twists. And there were a lot of bombshell moments. So yeah, it really had it all, and it should be studied in film schools or something because it's just so incredible, and it's been great to do this offshoot series on the channel. I really hoped people enjoyed watching. Any other thoughts before we wrap?
no, I've just really enjoyed having this discussion with you and watching together. This has been awesome.
Yeah, same. Well, everyone watching, if you would want to support the channel, please click the like button and subscribe. It really makes a big difference. And let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you have any suggestions for other shows, let us know. You can kind of tell what we're into by what we've latched onto in this show. And, we'd love some recommendations if you have them. So let us know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.